if you're watching this and you're not exhausted, you are doing it wrong because we're releasing this on Friday. The primary is on Tuesday. The vast majority of people who early vote in person started on Wednesday and go all the way through Monday. So if you're not at an early voting site or out there hustling, you're doing it wrong. If you're not exhausted, you're doing it wrong. I know Nikki here is a candidate. She's exhausted. Michael's exhausted because he's been out working. Chris pretends to be exhausted because he likes to make us think like we're working. And now, Travis, you're involved with a whole bunch of things, both in Springfield and in campaigns. So I'd imagine you're exhausted. But we're all looking forward to Tuesday so we can get out of the scrimmage and get in the actual game. And we can stop shooting our arrows at each other and start actually going after our real opposition. So I know we're all excited for Tuesday. This is our last SFR prior to the end of the primary election. So we're going to make it a good one. Let me introduce our guests. We have Travis Weaver. He's a state representative for the 93rd District, and he's been with us before. Travis, good to have you.
Good to be back. Love the smoke-filled room.
We also have with us Niki Conforti, who is a candidate in the 6th Congressional District. She's also a businesswoman, and she previously worked in the healthcare industry. Nikki, I know you're crazy busy, so thanks for taking a little time off the trail to spend some time with us.
Absolutely. This is one of my favorite podcasts that I watch regularly. So I'm excited to be here. Thank you for the opportunity.
Well, my wife is a big fan of yours, so she's happy to see you on. I am too, of course. But and for those who are watching, you're probably well aware of this. We've been inviting candidates to join us who are in contested primaries. We've invited pretty much all of them at this point. Some have said yes, some have declined. So, just for full disclosure, Nikki has agreed to join us. Her primary opponent declined. So, for anybody who's wondering about that, Nikki, like all of our candidates, is going to have a chance to talk about her race shortly, and we're looking forward to that. We also have with us Michael Jackowiak and Chris Butler. I got that right, right?
No, I
Don't
don't
think
even know my own name anymore. I could be.
Anybody ever mix you two up?
Nope.
I'm
No?
too handsome.
I think that's impossible to do.
You guys are very different, so I do think it'd be pretty hard to do that. All right, well, before we get going officially, just some housekeeping notes, some things that didn't really fit in a topic, but they're important to make sure we talk about and say. First, just to the Bailey family, especially to Finn, the poor boy has just been through so much, and now he's lost a grandfather. The Bailey family announced it. Darren's taking a little time off from the campaign trail to be with Finn. Our hearts break for that little boy. No one should go through that, let alone a boy of that age. So Finn's in our prayers. Also in our prayers are the people in Kankakee and going all the way, east Indiana into Indiana. I think the latest I saw was 4 different tornadoes. One was an F3. Looks like there were no deaths in Illinois. I believe. Looks like maybe 2 in Indiana, but certainly a lot of damage and a lot of pain and suffering for the people who live in those communities. And in addition, just massive hail, 5 inches I saw today, 8-inch hail. That's crazy. So our thoughts and prayers are with everyone who were in the path of the destruction of those storms. And then the last thing is if you're planning on voting, which you better be in the Tuesday primary, and you're planning on voting by mail, and if you have not done it yet, you must not put that ballot in the mailbox at this point. The laws have been changed, the rules have been changed. The post office no longer postmarks your mail the day that you put it in the box. So if you plan on voting by mail and you already have your ballot, go into the early voting site. You can deliver it there. You can deliver it in one of the drop boxes, but don't drop it in the mail. There's a chance it doesn't get postmarked by Tuesday, and there's a chance then that your vote will not count. So anybody have any thoughts on those 3 housekeeping items before we get into the agenda? It's like we covered it well. All right, well then let's hop right in. So first, we're going to go through a whole bunch of campaigns. Since Tuesday's election day, I figure you all expect that's what we're going to be doing. We'll start with the governor's race. I always like to do this, who's raised in the last week and what have been the major developments. So let me do that real quick and then I'll open it up. I looked through A1s in the past week. Heidner's brought in an impressive 537.5K. 500 of that is from himself, but that is a big haul for many of us who are wondering, was he letting off the gas towards the end? It seems like that is not true, so it's interesting to note. The Bailey campaign has brought in only 8.5K over the last week. Dabrowski campaign didn't have any A1s from the last week, but to be fair, they had a killer week last week, which we gave them a lot of credit for. So certainly still riding high from that. Mendrick campaign, no A1s in the last week, which that's not super uncommon. all the campaigns are out there hustling, talking to voters. The Bailey campaign's in a bus tour. I know Dabrowski is all over the place. I don't know specifics about Heidner, but I'm sure he's also all over the place. I see them active, very active on social media. And Mendrick has been burning up the gas, traveling the state the whole campaign. So everyone's sprinting to the finish line. It's going to be an interesting race, interesting end to the race. Anybody have thoughts they'd like to share on who they'd like to win, who they think will win? Come on in with your thoughts.
This is Nikki. I'll jump in. I think we're going to see some surprises in the governor's race. Money is the typical and go-to yardstick for success of a campaign, but we can't forget about hard work. And there are some candidates in this governor's race that have been, really pumping every day and traveling the state and working hard, getting out with constituents. And just from my own personal experiences, from running in 2024, we had very little money, but we worked very hard, and we were able to do pretty well in our race in 2024. So I would expect there to be some surprises in the governor's race because of that.
Okay.
Collin, I want to talk about a really interesting, I think, survey that you guys have put together about, electability versus how much does that person align with you? Because I found it really fascinating. First of all, I think that the data was spot on, right? I mean, we all know in a race, take away this governor's race, put presidential, put secretary of state, whatever, that there's a candidate with the most likely best chance to win who ends up winning, the person who everybody likes the most. One thing I'm wondering if it's unique about this race is if there's like a scale of how passionate somebody is about the candidate. Like, who are you going to vote for? Let's say John Smith. Why? Well, I've heard of John Smith. That's different from I'm voting for John Smith because I think that John Smith is Jesus reincarnate, right? Like that's the Trump voter. Like, I don't care if he's got the best chance to win. I will take a bullet for this man. I will do whatever it takes. As opposed to, well, yeah, this person has the highest name ID. That's who I'm going to vote for because I've heard of him.
Yep.
That person maybe is more susceptible to electability as opposed to like, I will vote for this person no matter what because I think that they are the second coming.
Yeah, I mean, it's a point Chris has been making repeatedly over the last few weeks that Bailey's support is definitely way more tepid than it was, which makes them susceptible. Now, the question will be, is the gap just too large for that to change
Right.
the outcome? But, many of you will remember 2010 when Andy McKenna was the front runner and spent a bunch of money. People knew him, but they didn't necessarily love him. Then there was really bad weather on election day and in the lead up to election day, and Bill Brady ended up sneaking through. Now, Brady had a lot of downstate support, so maybe that speaks more for Bailey, but it does certainly lend credence to the idea that the candidate with really, really strong support will overperform the polls. And I'm just looking at it now. There's potentially some snow in the forecast for Tuesday. So you just never know. Weirder things have happened. This race isn't for sure over just yet. All the ballots haven't been cast or counted.
I've been building up for several weeks to people I've had conversations with about the numbers. I was going to run the numbers and figure out where this governor's race is really standing. So one of the biggest problems that I've been talking about for weeks, months now at this point is that Republicans aren't enthusiastic about this governor's race. Not even just a governor's race. Republicans aren't enthusiastic about this primary. They just aren't. Part of that is because Trump is in the White House, and as we know, when your party's in the White House, you think everything's going fine, so you are less likely to vote. That's part of it. I also think recent developments in foreign policy have maybe mitigated Republican turnout a little bit, but not really a lot to where I would be seeing these numbers. The big thing is this: in 2022, there was more than $120 million spent on the Republican primary for governor between Irvin and Sullivan, Rabine, and Pritzker's DGA money that went towards Bailey and Uline, whatever. $120 million. It's a serious race for governor, and turnout was high in 2022. An operative friend of mine had said in passing weeks ago that everyone voted Republican in 2022. That's not exactly true, but it's pretty true. This year, there's been about $5 million spent in the Republican primary for governor. And when the Democrats control so much of the airwaves, I can't watch TV without seeing a Juliana Stratton ad, followed by a Raja Krishnamurti ad, followed by a Melissa Bean ad, followed by Melissa Conyers Irvin negative. That allows the Democrats to have all of the momentum going into election day because their voters have been seeing their ads for a while. Even if they're put off by the ads, even if they're sick of the ads, they know more than anybody else an election's coming. I got to go vote. I'm pissed off at Trump. There's an election coming. I got to go vote. So we're seeing that these numbers are from Numenor. So if you trust Numenor, you're going to trust these numbers. If you don't trust Numenor, you're not going to trust these numbers. But the best numbers I can get right now without going to every clerk's office in the state. So far, about 40% of Dem vote by mail requests have been returned. Only 33% of GOP vote by mail requests have been returned. And at this point, that's pretty much where the numbers are going to lie because of what Collin was saying earlier in regards to the new vote by mail law. There have been over 327,000 Democratic votes for this primary so far. There has been just above 99,000 on the Republican side of the race so far. That is a testament to the fact that so many Republicans in this state are either tired, don't want to vote, don't even know there's an election coming up, or aren't informed enough to get out of their house, go to the polling place, and actually vote for some of these people. And I think, and as I've been saying for a long time, that the beneficiary of this is not going to be Darren Bailey. Is Darren Bailey still going to win this race? Yes, probably. But I think the campaigns with the most support, the campaigns that have registered at least somewhat in the minds of voters in this cycle, have been primarily Ted Dabrowski, followed by Rick Hyde. So I believe pretty firmly at this point that on election night, Ted Dabrowski is going to get a higher than expected percentage of the vote because of the weather, because of whatever factor you might think. And we're all going to be sitting around on this podcast a week from today, shaking our heads and thinking that something else could have been done here. But it's hard to be confident about this Republican race for governor when the money spent is pennies compared to how much money was spent in 2022. And that's a testament to where the party's at. That's a testament to where the Republican electorate's at. That's a testament to where the donors are at. But the Democrats are doing really well right now. And it's something that we need to pay attention to going into November.
Well, I mean, DuPage County Republicans have been putting out the numbers for early voting, and last I checked from their updates, it's 3-1 Democrat over Republican in DuPage County in terms of turnout. So it seems to back up your numbers, Chris, that motivation is just, at an all-time low amongst Republicans, and that's incumbent on all of us and leaders in our party to get to these Republicans and give them some hope, because I was in a number of conversations this week just talking about, I'm sorry to say, but how depressing it is right now to talk to Republicans, to go to Republican events. I know you guys go to way more events right now than I do, but it's just not like it used to be. It's almost like it's just dark in the room no matter what room you go into. There is so limited hope right now, right of center in this state. And without that, we're not going to win. I mean, we've got the most positive person I know, and Travis here on the podcast. I married the most positive person I know. We need some of that positivity, and we need that soon, because right now you've got a party that feels very depressed. And if we can't turn that around by November, it doesn't matter who we nominate, we're going to be in trouble. And we got races we could win. I mean, I know Pritzker is vulnerable. I believe Kasten is vulnerable. I believe Sorensen is vulnerable. I believe we can not just hold our seats in the legislature. We could pick up seats if we could get some motivation on our side, some energy, some excitement, some fundraising. This does not have to be a depressing November. It's not foretold. It's only March. We can do it, guys. Let's go. Michael, you're usually our positive guy. What do you think about me being the positive one this week?
Yeah, right. It's a interesting dynamic, I guess. I would just say, I've been to a lot of events like Metro East and Southwestern Illinois, fundraisers and state rep, state senate, countywide, et cetera, events for these candidates. And a lot of people are coming up to me like saying, please tell me it's not going to be Darren Bailey. Please, please. And it's like, well, I wish I could tell you that, but I mean, it seems like he's, going to win by a decent margin. But like Chris said, I mean, when you've only got 99,000, we haven't even broken six figures when it comes to voters yet, right? 99,000 ballots cast. I mean, if you got that low of turnout, like Chris said, I mean, anything could happen.
Yeah. I mean, a strong closing from one of these candidates could have, should have, would have put them over the top. We'll see. Maybe it's happening now. We'll see. Obviously, if you watched our special episode earlier this week, you know that Chris, Michael, and I talked, and I ranted a lot, just sharing my frustrations with, what resonates with voters and what doesn't. I really just beg my fellow Republicans, people who are involved right of center in politics to, maybe take this as an opportunity to evaluate. We're right on policy. I get it, and we like to be right on policy. But if you want to win elections, you also have to be persuasive. If you can't get votes, it's not enough just to be right. And I think we've fallen into that trap a lot as conservatives and Republicans that, we're right and we're going to prove that we're right. And look, we're so much smarter than you. And that makes you feel better, but it doesn't necessarily earn you votes. And this has been proven around the country that you can both be right and get people's votes. And that's something we've got to really improve on, because I genuinely believe that there was a path to victory here for Heidner. There was a path to victory for Dabrowski, like Chris and others. I think at this point, probably the race is over, though maybe they're right that it'll end up being closer than it looks on paper. But either of those two gentlemen could have won this race. And I started off the most excited by Dabrowski. I mean, I'll share a story that I've never shared. Some of you know that I've made hundreds and hundreds of phone calls trying to recruit candidates in Illinois, especially statewide, and we came really, really close. There were a number of reasons why it fell apart. One of which was Ted Dabrowski came out and said he was going to run. And I looked at his coalition, the donors, and I said, you know what? This guy could be for real. And so that was one of the reasons why we took a step back and said, all right, this guy could do it. And so if you want to know why I've been so tough on the guy and why I've been so frustrated, it's that so many people felt like I did, that he could have been great. And again, maybe I'll be wrong. Maybe he'll pull it off on Tuesday, but the potential was there. And then when Heidner came out, I said, man, I haven't seen this kind of a candidate since, the Ronner days when he ran. And I know as the governor, he was, disappointing to many, but as a candidate, he excited a lot of people coming from the business world, not from politics. He can raise money and he could be a little different, and he doesn't have to play the same stupid political games that we all play because he's not in politics. Heidner had a ton of promise early on. There were opportunities here. This was not a fait accompli written in the stars that Darren Bailey was gonna be the nominee. We're all gonna say it in the general that Darren's numbers are scary. Hopefully he turns them around. We need him to turn them around. But right now it's scary what might happen with a weaker candidate at the top of the ticket. We could have avoided this. And just to my fellow Republicans, we could have done something about it. You still have a few days, so don't give up. But we got nobody to blame but ourselves if November goes badly.
Yeah, I would just say, it's the same issue that we've dealt with the last several elections, apathy, right? The voters are apathetic. They don't want to get out. And really, until we start winning and prove to them that their vote does matter, and that by getting to the polls, we can continue to win. I don't think it's on the candidates as much as you're describing, Connor. I think we've got a lot of good candidates in the race. I think we need to take it over the finish line. And until we do that, I think we're going to face this every election, where the voters get more and more disenfranchised from getting out to vote.
One last just real quick, one last tidbit, and then if anyone has any closing thoughts, you're welcome to give them. But one final thing in my notes that I haven't shared. I thought this was interesting. J.B. Pritzker and Christian Mitchell have their official general election kickoff event on Tuesday, March 17th at 5:30, an hour and a half before the polls close. It's an interesting tactic, basically trying to guarantee all the airwaves for yourself on Tuesday night, on primary election night, when you don't have a primary. It's certainly ballsy, which I guess that's J.B. Pritzker, it's not a surprise. But I'm a little shocked by this tactic, and I'm a little surprised by it because, he's even taken away from his pick for U.S. Senate. What if she is actually the nominee? What if she pulls it off? She's sharing the airwaves now with Pritzker. So I don't know. It just really stood out to me that that's when he's choosing to do his kickoff. I think that's notable because nothing Pritzker and his team does is without a significant amount of thought. So this is not an accident that he's doing this on primary election day.
My final point is going to be this, and this is why it's important for everyone not to take their foot off the gas with 4 days to go when you're watching this. I've been knocking on doors for the last few months. I know Collin likes to say I don't work, but I think I work pretty hard. There is interest amongst the Republican electorate. You talk to Republicans at the door about Republican candidates, they're interested. They are. but a lot of the time they don't know who's running. That's one of the biggest problems. People know that they're a Republican. People want to vote for Republicans, but they also want to know who they're voting for at the end of the day. And just providing them a little bit of information really does go a long way. So I think that while a massive statewide field program will be maybe too much to ask in this gubernatorial election, I do think to all the organizations that have the resources, have the bodies, have the committee, have the captains, this weekend is a really, really important weekend for you guys to go out and knock on doors and get your information out to voters. Because I'm telling you, people want to vote. They do. Maybe they don't want to vote as much as they should, but there are a lot of Republican primary voters out there who are not going to vote this cycle because they have no idea who's on the ballot.
Yep.
So just keep that in mind.
That's a fair point. All right, let's shift over to the U.S. Senate race. We'll start on the Republican side this time. We certainly will talk about the Democratic side in a second. In the race, I will disclose for like the 500th time that we are working with Don Tracy. Everybody knows it. Don Tracy is, by all accounts, also the front runner. That's not us just making that up. But there are other candidates in the race. Jeannie Evans, who's been charging hard over the last month and a half to 2 months. Casey Klebeck, who does have a voter base, specifically in like the Chicago and Cook County area. Our Carrie Caporelli also has a voter base in the Cook County area. Pamela Denise Long has done impressive in some of these debates. I'll give her credit for it. A few things in her background that have given Republicans pause, but she is an impressive speaker. And Jimmy Lee Tillman, who might be the most interesting person that many people have met. It's a cast of characters in this race for sure. Open it up. Anybody has thoughts. At this point, there's very little numbers. Some people have been trying to pass around a poll from the beginning of January to make it seem like none of these candidates have name ID. Yeah, they didn't at the beginning of January because none of them had run statewide before, but many of them have been doing things. I know the Tracy campaign sent mailers statewide, done ads, done texting. I know Evans has done texting and mailers in the Chicago area, and some digital, and some of the other candidates have done a few things as well. So those numbers are not accurate as to where the race stands today, but that's as much as we're able to share on numbers at this time. But I know the Tracy camp's feeling, really confident going into Tuesday, and I guess, just leave it at that. Anyone else have thoughts on the Republican side of the race?
Yeah, I can take this one, Colin. I think it's got to be Don. He's got to be our guy, and I have endorsed him, but I'm not really even saying that because I've endorsed him. I just look at these candidates and I ask myself, which one of them has the chops to walk into? I don't know if people know, once a week, all the Republicans in the United States Senate have lunch together. Which one of these candidates has the chops to walk into that lunchroom and belong as a United States Senator? You look at Don, successful business guy, right? Dot Foods, really accomplished attorney. I mean, just really a solid candidate, not to mention his ability to self-fund his race. And I also get that there are some people in the Republican base, the more grassroots people, that were a little bit miffed by some of the party issues that happened a couple of years back. And I think that Don's did a really nice job of getting beyond that. I know that there are some people that were upset about that, but are now able to support him. My comment about that would just be, we got to win this race. We don't get U.S. Senate opportunities very often, not to mention a U.S. Senate opportunity with a really, really legitimate candidate who can go in there and win. And so for all those reasons, Don is just such a clear-cut favorite, in my opinion.
Yeah, we've tried. I mean, I've been extra probably safe, not necessarily saying what you're saying, Travis, because I do believe that. But, no one's going to believe us saying it since we work with the guy. But the reality is you've got some candidates in this race with some potential. Again, I've really been impressed with Denise Long and her speaking ability. And Jeannie Evans, there's many people who hope she'll stick around, hope she has a future in the party. She's new. I mean, I think the challenge for her was running for U.S. Senate right off the bat, which, by the way, I said to her early on when she was considering. We hadn't been hired by anybody at that time yet. And I said, starting from nothing to go for U.S. Senate is a pretty significant leap, especially because raising money in a federal race, Nikki will tell you, it's really hard because you can't just get one gigantic check. You got to raise it in smaller chunks. And so running for federal office as something when you haven't even really been involved in politics in the state is just a tough thing. But Jeannie has shown some promise, and I do hope she sticks around. So there's some interesting developments from the race, and certainly, obviously, we want to have the strongest candidate going into the general election, especially if Democrats nominate somebody who's beatable, which we'll talk about next.
Well, I think that shows you how important this Senate primary is. That it's an open, not only is it an open seat, but the people that are running on the Democratic side are not, tier one candidates. And you've seen some of these ads and stuff on television and the attacks that they're lobbying at each other. And even, congressmen flying in from DC to like poke Pritzker in the eye by doing an event with Kelly, right? So there's all these divisions on their side. You've got Raja using Bruce Rauner talking points to attack Juliana because she's bought and paid for by Mike Madigan, which is true, but it's kind of interesting hearing those lines of attack from a Democrat for once.
Yeah, well, that's a fair point. I mean,
Yeah,
speaking of the oh, go ahead, Nikki.
Oh, I'm sorry. I was just going to say, I really just met Jeannie Evans this week at a local meeting, and I was impressed by her. I think she speaks well. She's got a great story. She definitely has the business acumen, and I'm sorry, she's an attorney, but has that acumen of going up against large corporations and CEOs. And I think she definitely has a future. I think the hurdle she faces in a statewide, like a Senate race, is just going to be people don't know her or they get to know her too late.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, that's always the challenge for newer candidates. I mean, I know, Nikki, you had to hustle to get your name out there and then maybe run a second time. I mean, she definitely has the profile of somebody who could do even better in a second run. So I know a lot of people are hoping for that down the road. On the Democratic side, you're seeing dueling polls. I don't know the last time I saw an objective, independent poll. Either it's Raja's pollster or Stratton's pollster putting out numbers every 3 or 4 days at this point, it seems. Of course, their pollsters each say they're up. Based on if you just live in the world of averages, you might assume that maybe Raja is up by a few points, but even Raja's polls show Stratton surging significantly. The question will be, is her surge too late? Dems obviously are prolific at voting early and voting by mail, and Stratton's surge has been later. So the question's going to be, will Raja dominate with some of those early votes that got in before Stratton even was surging and coming close? And did she just surge too late in this race? Because I firmly believe if this primary was 2 or 3 weeks from now, Stratton would win going away. But it's not. It's Tuesday. So it's going to be really interesting. The one thing that has struck me, though, is we've been preparing for the general election in case that happens, is I've said for a long time, Raja is a tough opponent because he's better at pretending to be a moderate. He really is just pretending. The more that I've been able to dive into his record and people have been digging into research and his votes and things he's said, I mean, people forget, even when he announced his campaign, he called himself a radical, common sense progressive. Radical Raja just rolls off the tongue there. I mean, he called himself that when he's trying to win a primary. So this is not somebody who's a Melissa Bean Democrat who's, an old school blue dog Democrat. And so I think Raja gives us a good opportunity on the Republican side. Stratton would be the most progressive candidate we've ever seen in Illinois. She gives us an awesome chance if she becomes the nominee. So I think for Republicans, certainly the Senate race provides some opportunity if we position ourselves well.
Yeah, I'm a little torn. I think Raja would be a little tougher to beat, but man, it just would be so nice to see Pritzker take the L. Yeah, that would be nice to see.
Yeah.
So Butler and I have been kind of talking about this. There's been a late kind of a surge amongst the local Democratic organizations to get out the vote for Stratton in the last couple of weeks, and that's not random. Of course, I'm sure some call is coming down from on high to tell the local Democratic organizations, you got to be with Stratton, you got to be with Stratton, you got to be with Stratton. So I'm curious to see how that plays out for her. It doesn't seem like Raj is putting a lot of effort into grassroots at all. I think, Collin, you're the one who said he doesn't even have yard signs at this point. I haven't seen a single Raja Krishnamurti yard sign at this point. So I think if Stratton's organizational support comes out over the weekend, I told the Republicans, you got to get out over the weekend. Democrats, I'm sure you're watching. I know Pritzker's staff is watching this. Go tell your organizations to go out and knock on doors if you want Stratton to win this race. I think that could be beneficial to Stratton. The one thing I've been noticing a lot on social media, and I'm actually encouraged by seeing is people are actually starting to think the right way about politics. A lot of national Democratic talking heads and interests are approaching the U.S. Senate race from a very racial perspective, and that's how Democratic politics works in the state, particularly in the city of Chicago. And it's going to be interesting to see because a lot of people are assuming that Raja's going to get a lot of white support and Stratton's going to get a lot of black support, and they're basically fighting over whatever Hispanic votes left. I'm not sure that's the case. I think Stratton is going to be eating into a lot of Raja's white support in the suburbs. And I do think that there's going to be a strong, I think Robin Kelly could do well in the white areas as well on the South side. So it's going to be very interesting to see how that's going to play out from a racial perspective. I honestly think Raja's weak right now. That's why I've been saying for weeks, if I was a betting man and I could bet on this race, which I'm sure I can nowadays, the gambling market's so bad. But I bet on Juliana Stratton. And if you could drop me into a race right now and tell me to win it, I'd pick Juliana Stratton in a heartbeat because I think they have the momentum. They've got the better campaign infrastructure at this point than Raja does. And I think it's Stratton's. I think it's Stratton loses at this point.
Well, we try to do some learning and teaching on this podcast. So I want to take this chance real quick to do that because there's something that I've been thinking about this race that is really instructional for Republicans in this state. So the challenge for Republicans is most of our experience is in name recognition races. Remember, there's 3 stages to every race: awareness, persuasion, turnout. You got to get them to know who you are, get them to vote for you, and then get them to the polls. But because Republicans have been so underfunded for so long, we very rarely make it to the persuasion stage. Most of our elections, whether they're local or at the state or federal level, end up being simply awareness races. Whichever candidate gets their name out there the most wins. And that's just what we're used to. And so as a result, a lot of our leaders, a lot of our candidates, a lot of even our staff and consultants only really know awareness races. Why do I bring that up? Because that's when you reach a cap. Why is Raja stalled? It's because he reached the maximum number of votes he could get based on awareness, and then it became a persuasion race. And Raja's message, his brand, whatever it might be, hasn't been as persuasive as the message and brand that Stratton or even Kelly have been able to present. And this is why we really harp on this for Republican candidates, that we need to get better at messaging. We need to get better at our branding and our presentation. I understand that for most of your races, Republicans, that doesn't come into play because most of your races, it's just he who has the name ID wins. I get that. But when you get in a real race, like let's say a statewide gubernatorial race or Senate race or congressional race where both sides are well funded, or a ledge race where $5 million is spent, the voters are going to know both candidates' names at a certain point. And at that point, it's going to be who has the best message, the best package, who connects the most with the voters, who do voters feel like they like the most. All that comes from your marketing, your advertising, your message. And that's why we at CORE and we on this podcast harp on it. I know it's not necessarily something you've dealt with a lot of Republicans because we're so underfunded. But I'm telling you that around the country, most races get to that stage. And when you're in a big race that's going to be challenged, you've got to learn how to play at that level. And so don't take your messaging for granted. Don't take your marketing and your packaging for granted. It may not end up mattering in your race, but you know what? If your race becomes real, it's going to matter. And don't be Raja, where your package wasn't as appealing and you hit your ceiling and then someone else snuck in and stole your victory. That's a little bit what Darren Bailey's running into. He's run into as high as he can get based on his name ID, and he's not really growing from there in the polls because people don't like the package. They don't want the candidate. That's the candidate they know. It's the same idea in the Republican side of the gov race. The package matters, the message matters. So if you learn anything from this podcast, please take that lesson to heart, that it matters how we present ourselves to the voters.
Hey, Collin, do you have any guess of what percentage of the final Dem vote is already baked in versus what percentage of the Republican vote is already baked in? I'm just trying to think, like, how much room does Julianne even have? I mean, if 70% of the votes have been cast for the Ds, that gets to be pretty baked.
Yeah, you know what? It's a great question. And since we record this not live, but all together at the same time, I don't have it with me. It might be something that if Chris, if you have, or Michael, if you have, we might try to toss it in the email that we send out to everybody to try to include it because that is an awesome tidbit. I just don't have it.
Well, the one thing that I thought was interesting, somebody came into our office today with this like walk card from the St. Clair County Democrats. And on one side, it's got a quote from JB endorsing Juliana and a picture of them together. And then on the other side, it has a picture of JB with Margaret Croak and a quote. It doesn't say anything about either. It doesn't say anything about Juliana. It doesn't say anything about Margaret. No bio, no nothing. Just this person's endorsed by JB Pritzker. That's all you need to know.
Huh.
So I'm sure this came, down from on high. I mean, I'm sure the camp, somebody from JB's team probably designed this and everything. And said, here, just slap your paid for buy on it and print it.
I mean, Chris, you can tell me if I'm crazy, but the Democratic sources that I have, which are fewer than what you have, but I still have some, they have said, they've echoed what we've read elsewhere, that there is a lot of hard feelings in the Democratic Party at how heavy-handed Pritzker is dictating things in the party, and getting involving himself in these races. At this point, they don't feel like anything's gonna happen because right now there is no alternative in this state. So you're just gonna dance with who brung you. You're gonna, do what Pritzker says. But if Republicans can start to provide an actual alternative in this state, that does create an opening. Democrats are, as we've said it for a long time, they're not in love with Pritzker. They live with him, they deal with him, they handle it. But if there actually was ever an alternative in this state, you might just see some of those fractures really widen in the Democratic Party because there is a lot of frustration.
No, you're right, Colin. And again, I worked in Democratic politics, and when I did, it was kind of during the era of good feelings of J.B. Pritzker. He just had gotten elected. Everyone was high on Pritzker. I was high on Pritzker. I was optimistic about Pritzker when he got elected. After Madigan went down, and there wasn't anybody else to kind of fill the vacuum in the Democratic Party, and Pritzker swooped in, it's not the same. People, again, do they like his policies? Sure. Do they think he's a decent governor? Sure, definitely. But from a party perspective, there's a reason why there was a huge split in the Democratic Party 5 years ago that everyone just kind of forgets about, that Dick Durbin and J.B. Pritzker both tried to take over the party. And Durbin won the first round, and Pritzker has won every round since then. And that has left a lot of hard feelings internally within the Democratic Party about J.B. Pritzker. Now, is it going to matter? No. I mean, Pritzker is still popular amongst the Democratic voters in this state. Every poll will dictate that to you. But amongst the party, I think the party is waiting for the day when JB finally runs for president and they can get somebody else into the governor's mansion.
Yeah. All right, we'll close out the statewide. We won't spend much time on this, but there are more statewide races. The main one for Republicans is the Comptroller's race. It's obviously an open seat, so it's one that we're watching very closely. So we're keeping an eye on Croak, Kim, Kifowit, and Villa in the Democratic primary. Republicans have just one candidate, so Brian Drew will be the nominee after Tuesday, assuming he gets at least one vote, which I'd imagine at least one of the five of us has voted for him. So congratulations, Brian, you're the nominee. There's three other statewide races for AG. Republicans have three candidates. None of them are overly serious, but we do have three candidates. Secretary of State, we've got two candidates. Fortunately, we don't have any candidates in the treasurer's race, though there's somebody running as a write-in. Really, it's the comptroller's race. That's where the majority of the focus is going to go for the rest of these statewides. Not to diminish anybody else who's put their name on the ballot. We appreciate them running. But the open seat is going to be our best chance here out of these four. So keep an eye on that comptroller race. It'll be very interesting to see who the Democrats nominate. Croak is the assumed front runner, but there really hasn't been any polling or numbers out there. Some people think Holly Kim is surging with Mendoza support. Stephanie Kifowit has a good amount of labor support, and Karina Villa is super progressive and certainly has a lot of support in that universe. So I wouldn't be shocked if any of these four win, but I believe many of us are assuming it's going to be Croak.
Well,
Yeah,
yeah,
probably.
you got, Croak with JB support, Holly Kim with Mendoza support, and then apparently via she's got Bernie Sanders support, whatever that
Bernie!
gets you, which is I just strange that Bernie's coming in and endorsing in that race and not like U.S. Senate. Like, I guess he doesn't really have much interest in that one for some reason. But I mean, it shows you, I think this one, even more so than the Senate race, is kind of this microcosm of the divisions within the Democratic Party, right? You've got all of these different camps, the progressives that are, with Bernie and Villa. You've got, Mendoza, kind of like establishment comptroller's office, supporting Holly Kim. And then you've got JB and all of his money supporting Croak. So
and
I think
Kifowit with labor too. I mean, they're a little
Yeah.
spread out, but they are. I believe she's their favorite of the many groups. So that's a really good point, Michael. If this was around the horn, I'd be hitting the button, giving you points. That was a good point.
I think that is just adds another layer of like opportunity here for Republicans because if they're divided that many different ways, there's going to be some hurt feelings on March 18th when the Democrats, wake up from their hangover or whatever.
Yeah, listen, how many times have we said it on this podcast? Chris has even confirmed it that Democrats don't win in this state because they're incredible at campaigning or great at messaging, though they're actually pretty good at that, especially during the era of Pritzker, or that they're, really unified. I mean, they have just as many fractures and splits as Republicans do. They don't win because they're doing so great. They win because we're doing so badly on our side. But that's the good news because we can get better. And if we get better, we could actually compete because, Michael, you're 100% right. There are so many splits in the Democratic Party. There's frustration over Pritzker. There's, the left versus, slightly less left. There are a lot of opportunities here that if we get our act together on the center right side here, we could actually go out there and win some races.
I definitely can tell that Kim and V are surging, for lack of better. I mean, I don't think it's technically a surge, but they've definitely been ramping up campaign operations in the last few days, a few weeks rather. So I still think Croak has this, but I think it's interesting to see that Holly Kim is. I mean, she's run a decent campaign. I think she's a decent candidate. I think she could have been really impressive as a candidate for Comptroller if she won this primary. But I think it's too little, too late for her. I mean, she started off really strong in this race. I actually thought she was going to be a real opponent to Croak throughout this. Then she kind of disappeared for a few months, and she's coming back now. But I think it's too little, too late. I think Via needed to kind of, push through the entire cycle if she wanted to be a serious candidate. And she had a big hit early with the ICE stuff, and since then it's been crickets.
Yeah, good point. Nikki, you were trying to jump in. Go ahead.
Yeah, I just wanted to give a shout out to Chris. We have, in my opinion, a very good comptroller candidate in Brian Drew. And I think we owe Chris a thank you for that, because for Chris, throwing his head into the ring to run for comptroller brought on somebody that said, hell no, I'm going to step up. So thank you, Chris.
Republicans were so afraid of the idea of Chris actually being their candidate. Nikki already has won the episode. Well done.
As they should be. If I was a nominee for comptroller, oh man, I would have gotten about 20% of the vote, but it would have been the weirdest coalition you've ever seen.
This is true. Broken politics even more. All right. Well, Nikki's clearly ready to bring the heat. So as we do with all of our guests, we give them a chance to talk about their race and tell you, our audience, why you should pay attention to their race and why they're the best choice for Republicans in that specific district. So let's talk about aisle 6. Nikki, we'd love to hear from you on why people should be paying attention to that race.
Well, thank you, Collin. Yes, things are definitely heating up between my primary opponent and myself. Here we are, days from the election. And I will just say that I believe I am the better candidate to win this race and represent the district for some very basic reasons. I live in the district. I've lived in the district for most of my life. My primary opponent touts that he's a fifth generation person that lives in the district, but he fails to mention that he's moved out when he was 5 years old. And I think that has something to do with it, being able to understand the people of the district through all the struggles, through all the ups and downs, the property tax hikes, etc. And having been around the block and run a campaign the last couple of cycles, I really believe that I can take this over the finish line and bring home a win and bring enthusiasm back into the electorate. Because as I said earlier, it's going to take Republicans starting to win again to really get people out and get excited about voting at the polls. All I would say is, I've got a lot of, right now, Congress is dysfunctional, right? I mean, we're really not getting a lot done there. And we need someone that with strength, with leadership, with integrity, and real world experience to be able to go in there and start to write legislation that's meaningful for the people of the district and will actually better their lives. I mean, isn't that what government is supposed to do? Take care of its people and better their lives? Well, that's what I believe I'm in a better position to do that for my primary than my primary opponent is.
And speaking of your opponents. Let's talk about the general. Should you win the primary, you'll face Sean Casten, and some of us here are very familiar with Casten, but many people may not be. People don't realize just how far left Casten has always been, but some people thought he was more moderate when he first got elected. His true colors have come out in recent years, and people have now become aware of what many of us were already aware of. Tell our audience around the state why, in the general election, they should be paying attention to the 6th district, because Casten is too far left for his district.
I'm so glad you brought that up. We worked hard last cycle to really educate the people, because you're exactly right. When Sean Casten won this seat in 2018, which, as we all remember, was a huge blue wave in the midterms of Trump's first term, he presented as a moderate. He's a good-looking guy, nice smile, charming, charisma, speaks well, and he's able to convince people that he's on their side. But very quickly, he turns around and votes against them. And it's really through social media that we, like it or not, there's good and bad with social media, but it's really been through social media that my campaign in the past and this cycle, have been able to get the word out at just how bad he's voting. He is truly one of the squad members. He's one of the most far left liberals on the Hill today, but he rides under the radar, and people think he's moderate because he tells people what they want to hear. But he continually votes against the people of this district, and really all Americans, voting in favor of illegals, voting in favor of socialism, voting against the safety of the people, and pushing the green energy, which more and more it's coming out of just how bad the green energy and scam is for the American people.
Well, I want our audience to know, I just was looking at the numbers right here in front of me for that 6th district. It's a D5 district. Trump only lost it by 5. It is not completely out of the realm of possibility that we can make a play in aisle 6. Obviously, we've got to have a good national economy. We need, Trump's numbers to turn around a little bit, but that district is sneakily in play. So, Nikki, how do people follow along your race? Where should they go to learn more about you?
Yes, Conforti, the number 4 Congress.com. That's CONFORTI, the number 4 Congress.com. And, we almost won in 2024. We came very close. On election day, we were up 51-49. And then, of course, the vote by mails came in and we lost by around 7 points. So it's very much within the grasp of victory. And we're working hard. We're doing a lot of things differently. We identified the gaps in our last campaign, and we've addressed those. And we're coming out much stronger. It's very exciting. We'll get through the primary and then on to the general in November. So definitely watch aisle 6.
All right. I love it. Let's move and talk about all the congressionals and bring our whole panel back to the discussion. There are 5 congressional districts that people should be watching on Tuesday night. We've got the 17th. We have 2 Republican candidates, Dylan Vancil and Julie Bickelhaupt, both of which have been on the podcast before, so our viewers know both of them. Whoever wins that primary is going to take on Eric Sorensen, and that is the number 1 potential pickup opportunity at the federal level. And then you get to aisle 6 and aisle 8 after that. As you just heard, Niki Conforti, her primary opponent is Skylar Dunsing. The winner will take on Sean Casten. In aisle 8, you've got Jennifer Davis and Mark Rice competing. The winner will take on, who knows? There's 8 Democrats on the Democratic side. Lots and lots of money being spent for Melissa Bean. I'm having PTSD, as I say every week, because I live in that district. Imagine how weird of a world it will be that I helped get rid of Melissa Bean, and then here we are after redistricting. I'm back in that district. And she might be my congresswoman again, unless we can do something about it. So let's do something about it. Aisle 14 is definitely further out of play potentially in this cycle, but you've got 2 Republicans running, Jim Marter, Gary Vissian. Winner of that will take on Lauren Underwood. In aisle 11, we've got 4 candidates on the Republican side vying to take on Bill Foster. You've got Jeff Walter, Mike Pierce, Tedora Brown, and Charlie Kim. Y'all don't have to talk about every race, but pick a race or 2 that you want to talk about, and feel free to jump in on any of those races you'd like.
I think the 8th district, I think it's Jennifer's race to lose. I think she's a great candidate, and I think she's in a good position to take the primary unless something unexpected happens over the course of the next couple of days.
That's the assumption by people here. She's certainly run a more active campaign than her primary opponent. She's gotten a bunch of good endorsements, including from some of the newspapers and media outlets. So it does seem that way, but I've seen no polling for it. So I guess I'll be very interested on election night.
I mean, I think obviously IL6, we've already talked about it a lot, but I think that is definitely a race to pay attention to. It's weird to me how, it's been one of the closest races in the state of Illinois cycle after cycle, but then it just doesn't seem to get the attention it deserves. And then obviously IL-17, I mean, that one has gotten a lot of attention and for good reason. And I mean, it looks like Dylan Vancil is going to win that primary just because he got out so early and has been campaigning, the entire time. But you never know. Hey, Bickelhaupt has gotten a lot of, strong endorsements from the region and, has a lot of support from the agricultural community, which is a big deal in that district. So we'll see who comes out on top.
Come on, Colin. Let's talk about Dem primaries on the congressional side. Those are more fun. Niki's going to win her race. We already got this taken care of.
Yeah, you sometimes forget this is a center right podcast. I know you struggle with that sometimes. We can't spend all day talking about your girl crush, Kat Abou-Ghazala. Sometimes we got to talk about other candidates.
My girl.
Michael, I do agree we need to keep an eye on 17. I'm not convinced that we know who the nominee is going to be. You're right, Vancil had a head start, and that might be enough for him, but Bickelhaupt has showed a lot of promise. I guess my only hope is that if it isn't Bickelhaupt, I hope she sticks around because she definitely looks like somebody who has a future in the party. I guess if I was a betting man, which I don't tend to be other than for horse racing, I'd probably say it's Vancil just because he got such a head start. But it is nice to see we've got some quality candidates in some of these races.
Politics is a horse race, right? That's what they say. So put your money down. If Abby complains, you can say you're betting on horses.
I have more faith in jockeys and stallions than I do you politicians.
Somebody's going to win. You just got to put your money on the right one.
This is such a unique year because if you were a betting man, you could have a say in it. On the Kalsi betting market websites, all of these local primaries have betting odds. I just saw that Dylan's a 65% chance and Julie's a 35% chance. And one that I thought was the most interesting is that Darren LaHood is a 99% chance, which means you put down $100 on Darren, you get a free $1. And so I'm like, is there any reason why I don't put like all my savings down on this race that I know 100% chance is going to win? And I make like 1 or 2%, but it's a free 1 or 2%.
Overnight, you make 1 or 2%. So joking aside, I did look at that like a week or two ago for some of the races where it's like, the outcome. Like for those of us in politics, it was like at one point, a few of these races that we already know are done. It was only like 93, 94, 95% on some of the betting sites. And I almost was like, why wouldn't I just plop a huge bunch of cash on this and make some free money? I didn't. I got a little boy. I try to be careful, but I had the same thought you did.
Yeah, I'm like, okay. If I put down 10 grand, I make $100, and I'm like, well, I don't think he's gonna lose, but man, that's a lot of money to put to make $100.
Scared money don't make money, Travis. Come on.
That's right.
Yeah, I still can't get the 8th district will be interesting. I mean, Melissa Beans had millions spent on her behalf, and Pritzker's people, including some of his former staffers, are all behind one of the other candidates here who, Junaid Ahmed, and I might have said that incorrectly. If I did, I apologize. But it's pretty clear where Pritzker wants this race to go. So that'll be another test, I think, of his strength. Not that he's put too much effort in, but his old staffers are all aligned with this candidate. So I think that's interesting.
I think, honestly, Kevin Morrison still has the best shot of winning that this time.
I thought early on he was going to pull it off. He just has not had any momentum.
Yeah, I just compare. I think there's a lot of like tier 2 candidates in that. Okay, like you've got Junaid Ahmed, you got Neil Coate. Neil Coate's done on arrival. If you think Neil Coate's winning that race, you're stupid. But like you got a lot of like 2nd tier candidates in that race, and Kevin Morrison, like he's been the county board member in a lot of that Cook County part for a long time. I think you never know where your luck when there's a free for all. And with Melissa Bean's money that's being spent on her behalf, Sure, she probably is a front runner in that race, but that's not a sexy pick. So if you don't, I think dark horse. I think Kevin Morrison might surprise people in that race. He better
Yeah.
because he just gave up his spot on the county board for this.
Well, listen, if it was not an 8-person race, I think Bean would be toast. I mean, there's so many progressives in that race. That's the only reason why Bean has a shot. Because with her, the money she's taken from corporate interest over the years, I mean, she literally was the banking lobby and the corporate lobby's favorite Democrat for years. I'm shocked that she's even in play here in this race, but it's because the progressive vote is so split between some of these other candidates. We'll see what happens on Tuesday night. Let's go to some state races now. We've done pretty well in the federal ones. We're going to break this up in a couple different categories. First is this. There are 4 incumbent Republicans who are facing primary challenges. So these are races where we already hold the seat, but individuals have chosen to challenge the Republican incumbents. The most interesting of which is House District 94. Noreen Hammond is being challenged by Josh Higgins and Bailey Templeton. The other 3, we've reported on them a number of times and just said that the challengers don't seem to be getting any traction. Seems like more vanity projects for certain individuals who like to tear down the party than anything. But just so you guys know what those races are, 109, Charlie Meyer is being challenged by Zachary Mayer. 89, Tony McCombie is being challenged by Victoria Honorado. And 116, Dave Severin's being challenged by Angela Evans. Again, 94 is really the only race out of those that seems like it's more of a real race. So we'll be watching that one a bit more closely on Tuesday. Anyone have thoughts on these races?
I think Noreen is in a good spot only because she has 2 challengers, not 1. I think we've talked about that before. I think if it was a one-on-one Higgins versus Hammond, Higgins could win that. But I think Hammond, I mean, she might not win with 50% of the vote, but I think she could still. I think she'll still pull out.
Okay.
I mean, I think 3 out of the 4 were over before they even started, and the only one really with, seemingly an opportunity to become a race was the Hammond one. And that one, as we've talked about ad nauseum, it's gotten pretty intense. But I think that ultimately Hammond will come out on top just because she's represented the district. Her name ID, I'm sure, is through the roof, and a 3-way race. I mean, it's hard to beat an incumbent when there's 2 people running against her because, you're splitting that anti-incumbent vote. And how do you get to a majority or a plurality when it's being split that many ways?
Yeah, it's a fair point, and it certainly plays in Hammond's advantage in this one.
Yeah, you guys might actually have a better grasp on how that's going on the ground than I do because my wife and I gave up social media for Lent, so that was kind of my end about how all these races were going. But just from my limited perspective, it does seem to me like maybe a couple of weeks ago she was in a little bit more trouble. My guess would be that I think that's kind of cleaned up a little bit. Maybe it's the temperatures have kind of come down and she's pulling away. I don't know. Again, my limited perspective without really hearing the folks like I used to when I was on social media, but that's kind of my take.
Yeah, I've talked to some people just to try to get a read on it on both sides, and both sides feel pretty confident. No one has shared numbers or, from what I even know, has taken polls. I'm sure HRO has that I don't have access to, but nothing public or nothing I was able to squeeze out of anybody. But both sides are talking confident and frankly predicting significant victories for their sides, meaning between Hammond and Higgins. So it'll be interesting. For me, I have said this before. I don't have a problem with the concept of primaries. What I have a problem with is when primaries are created to hurt the party. And so when I look at these 4 races, I look at 109, 89, 116. These were never real primaries. These were primaries that were intended to do harm on people's political enemies in our team. And I don't love that. If you have a situation where locals are unhappy and they would like to see a race and they'd like to see an airing of who's the best person to represent us, that I can live with. And from what I've been told, a lot of that is what's happened in 94, that they're just, for whatever reason, has been some frustrations and locals have stepped up. And yes, now other groups like the Freedom Caucus and DeVore and others got involved too. But it wasn't that they came in and recruited a candidate like you see with these other 3 races. So I can live with the primary here. Of course, I hate wasting resources on the Republican side, but sometimes, yeah, you do have to have primaries. They're there for a reason. You can't just coronate somebody. So I do think that at least this race, is something I can stomach more, and I'll be very interested to see who the locals pick after lots of money and lots of attacks going back and forth. The good news is it's a solid Republican district, so we'll hold on to it either way. The bad news is we will have burnt a lot of cash here that we certainly could have used in the general, but that's how primaries work. It's just what happens. So I'll be watching this one like all the rest of you, seeing which side is right, because both sides say they've got it in the bag. All right, let's go to the next category, which is legislative primaries that have general election ramifications. And there's several different sort of subcategories here. First, you've got Republican seats where once the primary is over, the race is basically over. And in 59, the primary is between Representative Paul Jacobs and Franklin County Treasurer Steve Versalino. And in House District 118, the district that Jacobs is vacating, you've got now three Republicans, Scott Duty, Dayton Lloyd, and Harold Visser, who are running. There is a D in that district, but it's like R plus 6,000, so it doesn't matter. So those are the two districts where the primary is certainly worth watching, and whoever wins will win in November. Then you have a district that Republicans are trying to hold on to, and first they have a primary. That's Senate District 33, Don DeWitt's current seat. You have Danielle Penman and Jessica Brueggemans who are running. The winner of that will face Michelle Clark in a district that we must hold on to in the fall. So we need to see local Republicans nominate the best candidate in that race. Then you have two potential pickup opportunities. Senate District 36, we've got Brad Beekman and Patrick Harlan, both of which have been on our podcast. The winner of that will face Mike Halpin, and that's the second most likely district that Republicans could make a play for if we're on offense in November. So 36, we need a good candidate there. House District 76, there's a primary between Liz Bishop and Crystal Lofgren. Everyone seems to keep forgetting there's actually a primary. So there's a rematch for the primary, and Republicans are hoping for a rematch in the general, meaning Bishop makes it through and faces Briel in the general, because Briel is absolutely vulnerable. All the lies she told voters 2 years ago where she pretended to be a Lansky Ednock moderate, she's now proven they're all inaccurate. So Republicans really want to see a rematch there with Liz Bishop, but first she's got to win the primary, so got to watch that on Tuesday. And then the last race here is House District 52. There's no Republican primary, but there is a Democratic primary. And in that district, it's a whole district. We need Marty McLaughlin to hold on to that. Right now, Maria Peterson, Aaron Chanding are fighting on the Democratic side. There isn't a consensus as to which would be the easier or the harder candidate to face. I personally think that Maria Peterson would be easier to beat, but there are others who think that it would be Aaron Chanding who'd be easier to beat. I guess we'll see in November, but we're going to find out who Marty faces on Tuesday. So any thoughts on any of those? You got a wide variety of districts there. Jump in if you got thoughts.
I mean, I think, 59, I think Paul Jacobs wins that one pretty easily. He's been, a state rep in half of that district, high name ID in one half. He's been campaigning hard. Americans for Prosperity and other groups have been sending out mail in addition to, the outreach that Paul is doing. 118, I mean, I think it's a race between Visser and Duty. Visser's got the support of the Freedom Caucus, and they've given him 10,000. The Freedom Caucus gave him 10 grand. Dan Calkins gave him 2,500. So for a race or for, a district where there's not been a lot of cash flow for any of these candidates, I mean, 12 grand is, a nice little infusion for Visser. But we'll see, how much pull the Freedom Caucus has down in that neck of the woods, because they don't really have a presence there at the moment. It's kind of Mike Boss country. So we'll see what they're able to pull off.
Okay, appreciate the perspective from our Southern Illinois expert.
So Collin,
maybe I missed it, but I didn't think I heard you say Amy Grant's old seat. We've got a really good candidate in Rob Rankovich running to keep Amy Grant's seat. And I mean, I think that's an important seat that we need to hold on to as well.
Yeah, Nikki, there's a bunch of districts that we for sure need to look at in November. We just focused on which districts had primaries for Tuesday night. So, but you are right. But you are right. Amy Grant's seat's going to be a big one for us to hold on to. So we'll be talking about that a lot after Tuesday.
So, Collin,
Yeah, go ahead, Chris.
I want to correct Collin real quick. He said the 118th was like an R plus whatever district. It's actually not. Pritzker actually won that district in 2018. Not a lot of people realize how bad Rauner performed downstate and how well Pritzker did. So, yeah,
because there's a lot of Union Republicans down there.
Yeah. So again, it's like an R+20 these days after Trump and everything. But I want to say that district's not as, deep red as one might think it
Yeah,
would be.
I'm looking at it now. Trump won it by 15 and a half. It's in our rankings, it's an R14. So you're right, Chris. It's solidly R, but it's not deep, deep, deep R. So fair point.
No, I think there's a lot. I think there's a lot of interesting primaries here. I think the one that seems to have gotten the most attention has been Senate District 33, the DeWitt district. So that's the one. I haven't been on the ground there. I know both campaigns have sent mail. I know both campaigns have ran strong campaigns. So I'm very curious to see how that one comes out.
Yeah. Yeah, it is. It has 33 for sure has been of these races. Seems like the hottest, with the different groups getting involved, the endorsements coming in from whether it's elected officials or newspapers. It seems like Brueggemann's, because she has the Senate Republican, I think they call her a favored candidate, I think is how they word it. And so some of that support has come towards her, and obviously having Don DeWitt's support has mattered. But then a lot of the unions have come in hard for Danielle Penman, and some of the people who call themselves grassroots Republicans have come in for Penman. So it is definitely going to be an interesting race to watch to see who pulls that off.
Mhm. Yeah, on the House side, just to highlight a couple of them, if we go down in numbers, it will be because we lost the Amy Grant seat or the Marty McLaughlin seat. So we got to make sure to do our cleanup there to make sure that we're staying even. If we go up, it'll be because we either won the Murray Brielle Liz Bishop seat. So we got to have Liz be the candidate there. Closest race in the House 2 years ago. I'm not a big fan of losers getting second chances. If you lose by a lot, you're done. But Liz, I mean, proved that she was right there. And now we got a lot that we can put on Murray Brielle about who she actually is to get Liz across the finish line. And my highest likelihood for us to go up would be the Gabby Shanahan versus Harry Benton seat. I know there's not a primary going on there. It's a November race, but Gabby is the trifecta of great candidate, winnable district, and has an opponent who's making mistakes. So Harry Benton got kicked out of the Dem caucus, stripped of his titles. I won't spread rumors because it's not been clear unless anybody knows something I don't know about what's going on there. There's just speculation, but there's a good chance that either Harry is going to be a disgraced candidate in November or will be a replaced candidate in November. And thank God that Gabby's who we have there, because if that was one that we didn't fill or we didn't fill with a good candidate, we might be in trouble, but Gabby is top notch.
Yeah, and we're definitely going to want to dive into that race, which it's a good transition. We'll be talking about that next. So appreciate the thoughts because that's definitely a big district. Any other thoughts on these primary races before we take that transition and head to the Shanahan race? All right, you know what we'll do, since that was the end of this one, we'll let Travis sort of be the intro for that topic. So we'll officially count it, because what I don't like is some people will go in and click on the topic and then they'll miss all the good things you just said, Travis. So we'll make that the official start
Okay.
of the topic for those who
Sorry to
maybe
jump the gun.
no, you're good. Hey, listen, there's no rules here. I got no control of this thing. But House District 97, Travis just said it. It was already one of the best potential Republican pickup opportunities, even before Harry Benton and his problems. Now, not only is it that Harry Benton has had problems, but it's the gigantic cover-up from Democrats and from Benton. I'll give credit to Gabby Shanahan and to the House Republicans for raising the pressure and raising the heat on this thing, because even Democrats, even left-leaning blogs like Capital Facts have been saying this isn't okay, that it's been weeks and nobody has reported why he was removed from committees, why he was kicked out of the Dem caucus. We've reported on this podcast what we've heard. As Travis said, it's mostly just rumors at this point, which isn't okay. You've got an individual who's an elected official, and Welsh and his party and his caucus right now are covering up whatever it is that led to them taking some pretty drastic action. So again, Republicans are doing the right thing by turning up the heat here, and they need to continue, and I know they will continue. And in the meantime, it's certainly every day that passes that Democrats bungle what's going on here, 97 becomes that much more in play. And Benton was already vulnerable for, running for extra pensions like he did in April. This was a district again that Republicans were make a big push for in November, and now it just went to the top of the list.
Well, I think it's crazy to me that, okay, whatever he did or whatever he was accused of, that was bad enough to remove him from all of his committees, remove him from the caucus. He's a man out on an island by himself. But the Democrats aren't going to tell us why. They're just like, we're just going to keep this top secret, let him continue to, be a member of the General Assembly. He's still casting votes. He's still representing constituents. If this was as bad as what it seems like it is, then, they should let us know what's going on.
I'm
Yeah, I
not
agree with that.
usually one to do the what if the other side did this, but imagine if the Republicans kicked Travis over here out of the caucus, and we were just sitting around for weeks, and we're just like, "Why is Travis out of the caucus?" They're like, "Oh, the governor would be talking about it. The National Democratic Party would come in with money. They'd be running ads in Travis's district. All of this stuff will be happening until we figured out why poor Travis here would have gotten kicked out of the Republican caucus." But you're right, Colin. A lot of people have questioned why this is happening, but I'd like to see more. I'd like to see this become a big issue. Now you have to be careful. You got to be careful because you don't want to push too hard because then maybe Harry backs out of the race. Doesn't sound like he's going to at this point. But if Harry backs out and they replace him with generic Democrat from Plainfield, then the race comes a little bit more of a lift than you would have had against a weak, a wounded incumbent Democrat.
Yeah. Which is why I'm sure they're keeping this close to the vest. Everything's political, especially with Welsh. Um, and so, yeah, I mean, I'm sure they've got a whole plan for how they're going to handle this and hold on to the seat because it's never really about good government from Chris Welch. It's about how does he hold on to and gain as much power as possible. All right. For those who watched through this or kind of poked around, you'll notice we didn't really talk about county and judicial races. There are definitely big races for Republicans, even further down ballot than what we have time to talk about today. But in order to keep this podcast not 6 to 7 hours, we're just going to stop there on the races to watch. There are definitely more races you should be paying attention to. If you're curious about what races in your area matter, you're welcome to email Chris or Michael. They got nothing else to do, and they're happy to tell you what other races you should watch. In the meantime, I want to put a bow on this conversation about the primaries. We'll certainly talk about this a lot next week and the week after and the week after, but I've got a question for you all, and that is, can Republicans unify after this primary? Of course, every party faces this. Every party has to come together after a primary, but it seems like Republicans in Illinois struggle with this more than parties in other states or other parties in this state. And maybe it's just because there's hard feelings after losing for as long as we have. But unity is not a word we're very good at attaining post primary, which is unfortunate because, unlike other states, we have 8 months. We have plenty of time to come together. Many of the other states that CORE works in, their primaries are June or August. They have 5 minutes to get over their hard feelings, and then it's right into the election. So suck it up, Buttercup. Let's go. Republicans, we got some time in this state, and yet we still never seem to be able to come back together. I know there's a unity event Wednesday morning, which I'm happy to see. I think the party initially made a mistake making there be a cost, but they rectified that, which I'm happy to see. And some of those people who seem to just want to tear down the party, first they said, well, we're not going to the unity event because there's a price tag and there shouldn't be a price tag. So then, to Kathy Selby's credit, she's paying for this thing. So thank you, Kathy. Now there's no price tag. Well, now those people are saying, well, no, I'm not going to go unless you pledge 100K for the winner of the GOP primary for governor. If it's not clear to you now that these individuals just constantly move the goalposts because they make money off of your rage. They have monetized their Facebooks, and so they don't want things to get better because they make money off of your clicks and your comments. So nothing the Republican Party does will ever be good enough because then they'll lose money. If they have nothing to be upset about, they won't make that money. So you have to understand the source of these people who are making you enraged about the Republican Party and ask yourself, are they doing it because they want things to be better genuinely, or are they doing it because they're making money? It's a fair question. For those of us who actually want things to be better, yeah, there are problems in our party. There are a lot of them. We got to do something about it. That's why we've done 140 some odd or whatever it is episodes of this podcast. We got work to do, but if we're not going to accomplish it, if we can't actually heal these wounds in this party. So I ask you all, can we unify? And if so, how do we do it?
I think in some cases, yes. In other cases, no. I think in those situations where there are primary races, a lot depends on how those races were run and how low one or the other candidate got and in the attacks. I mean, I know of races from 2022 where still today there is a divide between the camps of the primary Republican candidates that ran in those races because of the nastiness. So I think it depends. I think it was a great move by the state to have the unity breakfast, lunch, whatever it is on Wednesday. It's my understanding that has not happened in a number of years here in the state to have that unity lunch. So I think it's a step in the right direction. I think it takes bold leadership. We've got to get everybody in the room, and we've got to start hashing this out and talking and listening and taking action. Writing things down on a whiteboard and putting some solutions around how we can bring the party together, because it's not going to happen unless somebody really takes the bulls by the horns and makes a plan and sticks to it and gets it done.
I think Nikki's right. I think it's gonna be very difficult to unify in some of these races. But as I talked on the special episode on Tuesday, if party unity is going to come from anywhere, it's going to be down ballot. But there are going to be other races on the ballot that maybe didn't have primaries, that weren't divisive, where like the Gabby Shanahan district that Travis is talking about. And that's an opportunity for everybody in that district to come together after that primary and say, listen, despite anything that happened in the primary, Gabby Shanahan should be elected. Okay. And there's races around the state that look like that. And that's why I've encouraged you. If you're not satisfied with the outcome of a certain race, there are other races on the ballot that you can go to. You can still help the Republican Party win elections. I think so many times people lose their primary and they say, well, I lost or my guy lost, I'm done. No. There's so many other Republican candidates out there that would love your help. And if they got everybody's help who weren't satisfied with one race or another, it would actually be very beneficial for the party.
I'd say up and down the ballot. I mean, if you're not happy about, let's say, the Gov nominee, there's still Senate, there's still Comptroller. Both of those are races that we can overperform and shock people in, let alone state ledge and judicial and county. So that's my only clarifying point, is both up and down the ballot, there's going to be plenty of races.
Yeah, I think we can definitely have unity, but I'd like to draw a distinction between what unity and buy-in or energy look like. I think I speak for all of us when I say, when the elections are over, we're all going to have unity, right? I'm going to vote for every single Republican up and down the ticket. I'm not going to badmouth any of them. I'm going to tell people to vote for them. But that's a big difference from saying I believe in that candidate. I believe that candidate has any chance. Take Illinois 17, for example. I'm endorsing Dylan Bancel. I think Dylan Bancel is a better candidate. I think both of those candidates are really quality candidates. Whether I win or lose there, I'm going to have energy and buy-in to go try to help that race be successful. There's other races where I think we only have one candidate or two candidates that really have a legitimate chance of winning. And if one of those one or two candidates don't win, I have no obligation to go tell donors to give money to a candidate that I think has no chance of winning. I have no obligation to spend my time knocking on a door for a candidate that I think has no obligation of winning. So will there be unity? For sure. Like, we're all on the same team. We're all in the same party. We all want to see Republicans do well. I expect we'll all vote for every single piece on the ballot. If that's what we're asking for, we got it. And now if we're asking to have blind energy and buy-in for every candidate, of course we won't get that. Like, who's going to have buy-in for a candidate they have no hope in?
Well, and I think it's only fair. I mean, I don't want to put words in your mouth, but I'd imagine the Gov race is certainly on your mind when you say that. Again, I don't want to speak for you, but I think that mentality is fair, because I think we've seen the Republican Party in the state, a lot of people go around saying, unify, unify, unify. But like Nikki said, without a plan and a vision and, an electable candidate, and okay, you can say the words all you want, but we're so weak in the state, it's not like we can spread ourselves thin and involve ourselves in hundreds of races. We're going to then be weak in hundreds of races. So yeah, there's going to be a division of labor, and there's a little bit of this prove you can win kind of situation. And I think in the primary, that's the level that Ted Dabrowski is being held to. Prove that you can win before we're going to come and back you over, let's say, a Darren Bailey. And that's how it's supposed to be. So it's fair. But then you can't flip that around to the general and say, well, you know what? Now you have to vote for me because I happen to be and donate to me because I happen to be the nominee. Well, hold on a second. You wanted us to hold Heidner and Mendrick and Dabrowski to a certain standard. Now we're going to hold you to that same standard. Can you win? Can you improve from the last time around? Can you raise money? Can you show you can compete in the suburbs? Are you going to change this mentality that all you're going to do is focus on turnout and you're not going to go actually campaign in the battleground areas of this state? Like yes, you're going to have to prove to Republicans that you're a winning candidate before they're going to get super excited about your race. It doesn't just happen because you won the primary. It doesn't just happen because you say the word unity, especially because the people we're talking about on this race who claim they want unity are the same people who've been involving themselves in a bunch of other races around the state, disunifying the party. So you can't have your cake and eat it too. If you want to involve yourself in inter-party squabbles, then you're going to have to accept the outcome, which is a party that is fractured. You had a chance to be unifying this party. Bailey, I said it on Tuesday. My biggest frustration, yeah, I went off on Prof Denives and some of the stuff that they were doing and saying. But my biggest frustration was with Bailey because every poll has him up by massive margins in this race for the primary. He did not have to take the bait. He did not have to go whack Dabrowski, whack Proft, whack Ives, go after them on social media. That never had to happen. This race was over weeks ago. It just is. The numbers are there. I'm sorry to the other candidates. I know you're working hard, but that's the reality. Bailey did not have to go and disunify this party in the weeks leading up to the primary. He had a once-in-a-generational opportunity. This rarely happens, where you've got the race covered. You could have been the great unifier over the last few weeks, the adult in the room, the guy who said, we're above this, guys. Let's all start to come together. But instead, they chose to get down in the mud. And then Tuesday night, they're going to come back to all of us and go, well, now you have to get behind us. It's like, wait, hold on a second. You chose to disunify the party. Now we're disunified. So now you've got to go out there and fix it. Maybe that's just me, but that's how I feel. If you break it, then you know what? You got to fix it. All right, let's carry on. I think we've covered that topic well, I guess. All right, so
it's a tough one to follow. You were cooking.
So, all right, so let's do this. This is our last official topic before we go to our quicker ones towards the end. But I will say it's a little bit in honor of Travis, though I was kind of thinking about some of this stuff prior to the fact that I knew we had Mr. Weaver on with us, but he's always encouraging all of us to be a bit more positive. So we've got a topic here just for you. I have three things that I'm going to say that three people I never praise, or three entities I never praise. Things I saw over the last week that I just want to say, you know what? Okay, fine. I can give some props to that. So first, here's the biggest shocker of the world. I'm actually going to give a little credit to Governor J.B. Pritzker. The fact that we're looking at an increased focus on home ownership, especially for younger people, for their first-time home buyers, this new Access Home program, things happening at IHDA. I don't know everything about the program, so I'm not going to pretend like they're perfect. And knowing Pritzker, I'm sure there's a lot of things in there we're not going to love. But I'm going to give credit where it's due. It's pretty rare for Democrats in this state to talk about affordability and then actually try to do something about affordability. Usually they talk about it, and then they go over here and raise their taxes and fees and make it less affordable. So I will give credit that J.B. Pritzker is at least doing something to try to improve affordability. Of course, the 50-plus tax and fee hikes that he's done up till this point certainly say that this is not going to be common from him, but I'm trying to be positive. So here we go. Another one that's going to shock you all, I'm going to give some praise to the CTA and Brandon Johnson, because the new security plan that they've put out for the CTA is worlds better than the previous plan that they had. I know there was a lot of pressure from the federal government to make it happen. I'm really appreciative of the police chief there for stepping up, because a lot of this is because of our police force, the Chicago PD, who's going to make this happen. But still, credit where it's due. We need to improve safety in the CTA. It is awful there, even as crime stats are maybe showing some positive signs elsewhere in the CTA crime has been exploding. So I'll say something I don't think I've ever said, but kudos to Brandon Johnson and to the CTA for actually trying to do something about it for once. And last is this. I get frustrated by a lot of the narrative by Republicans and conservatives attacking our schools and attacking our school districts. I certainly understand that we must improve education in the state. I've spent a lot of time trying to help improve education in the state, so I'm not going to say that everything's perfect, but it seems like Republicans and conservatives have gotten in this rut where we just attack our schools and attack our school districts, which, as Chris said, I think earlier in the week and last week, that does not play well with voters, nor is it really the right thing to do. Why don't we actually be collaborative and invest in our schools and make them better instead of just attacking them? So I'm gonna put my money where my mouth is. The Daily Herald had an excellent article here this week that talked about students in Illinois are excelling in AP exams. And it's true. One of the things we do in Illinois, a lot of people don't know this, but one of the things we do in Illinois education that sets us apart around the country, yeah, on some of the test scores we do lag, but here's one thing we do great. That is AP placements, getting our kids credits before they've graduated high school, giving them college level options like dual credit offerings, and especially career pathways and CTE programs. A lot of that was pioneered right here in Illinois and a couple of our suburban school districts, and now school districts around the country are doing it. So yes, we do have improvements to make, but we're seeing great numbers here. Fifth in the country when it comes to AP exams and scoring on those exams. You see third in participation amongst Hispanic students, fourth in the nation amongst Black and Asian students, second nationally for tenure growth amongst graduates. These are all positive signs, and you know what? It's okay to say some positive things about our schools every once in a while. So, three things of praise for me. Anybody else want to give some praise, especially towards someone or something maybe you wouldn't typically praise? Give it a try.
Yeah, I'll give some credit to Susana Mendoza. And I'll set up a path where I could give credit to the governor in the future. So part of the big, beautiful bill had this child education tax credit. It's kind of a backdoor for a voucher program where Illinois donors get a $1,700 tax credit match from the federal government. They already had that. It's going to happen, period, no matter what. The only question is, do Illinois students get the benefit of that, or does that benefit from those donor dollars go to Iowa, Nebraska, Florida, wherever? And so Susana Mendoza came out and said that even while she doesn't like many parts of the big, beautiful bill, that you got to hold your nose and say that the president did a good job on this one, because this is a good opportunity. It gets more money to K through 12 students. And it's not just for private schools, it's for tutoring, ACT, SAT prep, trade schools, special education needs, all sorts of great things. So I appreciate her coming out and making that point. And the governor's really dragging his feet. It doesn't look like he's going to accept that money. It looks like he's going to side with the teachers' unions and keep kids from getting that money for their education. But I'm leaving it on the table. If he does sign us up for it, then I'll give him kudos when that does happen. So it's an option for the governor to get my thumbs up at some point down the road.
There you go. You're promising a positive press release if he does the right thing, especially because that.
I know about a press release. I'll come on your show.
Okay, all right. I don't want to overpromise for you. I'll put out a press release. I mean, honestly, again, I'm somebody who's invested a lot in education, and I don't want to see our schools disinvested. So I understand why some groups are wary of school choice, but that's not what this is. And you're right. There's a school choice aspect to this, but it goes to students, even in public schools. It helps every student. Has the potential to help every student, especially with all those additional expenses that families are really struggling with right now. This is a direct benefit to the working families of Illinois. Even if you don't like school choice, which we can have a whole intellectual debate about school choice, fine. This is about helping kids and helping working families. And I really hope that Pritzker will do the right thing. But he wants to run for president, so I feel like he can't support this because he feels like it'll hurt him in a primary. Wouldn't it be nice if we had a governor who just did what was right for Illinois families instead of what he wanted for his national ambitions? Anyone else? Or are we going to just let that fly here?
I got nothing.
I don't know if this counts, Collin, but in relation to one of our adversaries in the U.S. Senate primary, I heard Jeannie Evans speak on Tuesday at the same event Nikki was, and I have to give Jeannie Evans credit. She's the first Republican candidate for any office I hear talk about antitrust, talking about breaking up big corporations, talking about suing big corporations. And I think that's something that has a place in the Republican Party. And after she loses on Tuesday, I hope she keeps running for things, because that's the messaging I want to keep seeing.
Interesting. All right. Let's go to our news you can use. We'll do this quickly because I know a few of our panelists need to go. Just a couple bills here, and I wouldn't even say that they're bad bills necessarily, because I think there needs to be a robust debate on both of these issues. But it's in the crafting of the bills where there are problems. So first, let's talk about Senate Bill 2906. This is essentially the PRO Act, which is the big national debate over will we let rideshare and app people who make money off of apps, will we let them unionize? It's essentially the state version of that, which I've heard some positive arguments for. I've heard some negative arguments for. We'll have some debates on this podcast in the future because I am interested in this topic. But here's the thing you need to know about. Tucked into this bill is a 20 cent per ride fee that's going to be added on to ride shares if this passes. And again, remember I mentioned just a little bit ago that Democrats do a great job talking about affordability, but when it comes to actually legislating, they tend to actually raise our cost of living, and it's one thing after the other. So if you're a Republican and you're running for office or part of an organization, here's another example of a bill that will increase the cost of living, the cost of doing business in the state. Another 20 cent fee on every trip. If you ask anybody who takes trips to and from O'Hare or around the city of Chicago or through the suburbs, there are so many different taxes and fees already on ride shares. This would be just yet another one on top of it. So here we go. Yet again, Democrats raising the cost of living in Illinois. Moving to the next one, we'll talk about Senate Bill 2726. Again, a bill that I think this sponsor, Julie Morrison, I think that her intentions may be good because there's all sorts of conversations about will law enforcement impede with our elections, and I don't believe that was ever part of the plan, and certainly no Republican agrees with letting that happen. But Democrats are going to keep pushing this narrative, so I'm sure that's where this is coming from. But the way the bill is written, it says no law enforcement agent can go into polling areas, polling authorities, or polling places unless they have permission from the election authority or the election judges or a court order. I understand why maybe they want to approach it this way because they're just thinking ICE, but what if there's an actual emergency in that polling place? Unless they have permission, they cannot go into that polling place. Again, the crafting of the bill is the problem here. Maybe the concept itself has some merit. Let's talk about it. But the crafting of the bill seems pretty I don't know, pretty problematic. I think law enforcement, if there is an actual law enforcement problem and they need to go into a polling place, I don't want them standing outside for 15 minutes while they wait for the county clerk to give them permission. Couple other stats for Illinois. We like to talk about stats and where Illinois ranks nationwide because we see these all the time. And every time I pull them up, Illinois is always towards the bottom. I get excited when I see one where we're 35th instead of 50th. Here's a couple more for you to be aware of. Wage growth in Illinois since 2010 Lane will bring up a map on screen, which you'll see if you're watching this on YouTube. Illinois is the second worst of all of our surrounding states and the third worst in the Midwest in wage group for the last, 14, 15 years. Illinois is 19.5%. Only Wisconsin and Nebraska were worse. Meanwhile, Indiana was better. Missouri was way better. Michigan way better. North Dakota way better. Iowa way better. Ohio way better. South Dakota way better. Minnesota way better. Those are the states we are losing to. That's what I say over and over on this podcast. If we were losing to big states or losing to Texas and Florida and some of these states that are thriving economically, fine, I could live with that. But we're losing to Indiana. We're losing to Missouri. We're losing to North Dakota. Come on. Could we please get our act together? We could do so much better in Illinois. Okay, last one here. Lifetime credit card debt in the nation. Lane again will bring up a map for you all to see. This is lifetime credit card debt by state that you're seeing on screen. And Illinois was the highest by far in the Midwest. In fact, every other Midwestern state was at least $40,000 less. Iowa and Wisconsin were the two lowest in the country, and yet Illinois was significantly higher than all of those. 84,000 higher than Iowa, 82 higher than Wisconsin. So every metric, we're running out of metrics to look at where we see that Illinois continues to lag the Midwest, and there are no excuses for it. All right, with that, we will go to our final segment, OGs and Clowns of the Week. What do you guys got?
I have
I'll
two OGs.
jump in. I'll just say that My clown of the week is any Republican that sits home on Tuesday and does not vote is a clown. Republicans that don't vote elect Democrats. It's simple as that. Or someone that can't beat a Democrat in the case of the primary.
Strong words, but I couldn't disagree with you.
I have two OGs and two clowns. I'll start with the clowns. My first clown of the week is former mayor of Dalton, Tiffany Henyard. In a hilarious twist that nobody saw coming, she moved to the state of Georgia and is now running as a Republican, adopting the time-honored tradition of failed candidates in Illinois, moving to another state and running as a Republican. I have boldly predicted that somehow the Democrats are going to use this against the Republican Party. There will be at least one Facebook post or text message or mailer even that tries to tie the Republican Party to the failed leadership of Tiffany Henyard in Dalton. And that would just be hilarious if it happens. Not for the party, but I would get a laugh out of it. So that is my first clown of the week, Tiffany Henyard.
Well, and she filed to run as a Republican in a county that Kamala Harris got like 75% of the vote in. I mean, it's one of the most corrupt counties in Georgia, so I guess she'll fit in. But she chose the wrong party.
That's pretty funny.
So my second,
and from what I heard, she's not even going to make it on the ballot because she won't meet the residency requirements. So there you go.
My second clown of the week is Will County board member Jackie Trainier, who decided it was a great idea for reasons beyond anybody's comprehension in her trial, where she was accused of computer tampering of Judy Ogalla, who is another Republican elected official in Will County. She decided instead of a jury trial, she wanted to move forward with a bench trial when she's getting challenged in her primary on Tuesday. And the judge just so happened to be a Republican. So she chose to go up against a Republican judge instead of a jury of her peers. Not saying any impropriety here. I'm just saying that's a really weird thing to do. And she was convicted on 2 out of 3 counts of computer tampering. So she is now convicted. Jackie Trainier also stupid because famously she decided that one of my clients was a doctor because he's Indian instead of the fact that he's a CPA. So not only is she stupid, she's also vaguely racist, which is hilarious. Jackie Trainier,
has run over a kid too. I mean, let's
and she also ran over a kid. Who could forget? She's got a laundry list a mile long of problems with herself. So I look forward to her losing on Tuesday night in her primary campaign. Jackie Trainier, you are the second clown of the week, and my two OGs of the week, Jackie Haas and the aforementioned Judy Ogalla. They are running a charity drive for the victims of the Kankakee hurricane over the weekend. Over the week.
Love it.
So if anybody would like to donate to the charity and to help the victims of the Kankakee hurricane, please do so. I think it's a fantastic thing to do.
I'll have Lane put something up on the screen so people know where to go. Great idea, Chris.
My OG of the week is my OG of the week from this week, exactly 6 years ago. The Bradley Braves won the Missouri Valley Conference basketball tournament. Then the NCAA tournament got canceled because of COVID. In my opinion, if you win your conference championship and then lose no more games, you are national champions. So
Yep.
I am claiming the 2020 NCAA national championship for the Bradley University basketball team. And my clown of the week is my clown of the week from 6 years ago, Governor Pritzker, who sent all of our kids home from school during the COVID pandemic, kept them home for way too long, declared emergency authority for far longer than any other governor did. So COVID's still haunting us, both our OGs and our clown.
What else you guys got? I got some I can jump in. Chris, you got 2 of the 3 I thought you'd have. Did you see the story about Melissa Conyers-Irvin with her building wealth today for tomorrow annual summit? Fox 32 ran a whole thing on this where it's costing taxpayers hundreds of thousands of dollars for her to put this on every year and glorify herself and get her face everywhere. I think it says taxpayers on the hook for more than 220 grand for this.
I did not see that, but Melissa Conyers-Irvin has a rap sheet a mile long at this point with questionable ethical decisions. So that's why I don't think she's going to win this primary on Tuesday. But
it just seems like, man, she just never stops. She's like Jesse Jackson Jr. There's always something else you find where you're like, he
may win on Tuesday. He may win on Tuesday.
Michael, were you trying to jump in?
Oh, yeah. I was just going to say Raja Krishnamoorthy for sure because the people were talking about how he treated his staff, especially from a fundraising perspective, and he just claimed he was really stressed. So running for one of the most important jobs in the country, U.S. Senate, and you're stressed out over fundraising. Sad.
Who was the California governor candidate on the Democratic side who was like screaming at her
Oh,
staff and got
Porter,
caught for it?
right? Porter.
Yeah, I guess gives vibes like that a little bit.
Yeah.
We've almost gotten through all of mine, but I want to stay married. So my wife gave an OG that I need to make sure I give here. So Dr. Amy Beath, I hope I have that right. She's an anesthesiologist in Omaha, Nebraska, which is where my kid's sister lives right by there. Apparently, a 4-year-old boy was in the care of DCFS and needed heart surgery and was dropped off at the hospital by himself at 4 years old. Dr. Beath was heartbroken for this little boy. She took him in, even though she already had 4 children of her own, and she found out that he had 3 siblings that were also in the state's care. So she convinced 2 of her own siblings and one of her coworkers to adopt the other siblings so they could all see each other and grow up together. All the adoptions took place on the same day. I'll have Lane bring up a photo. Really, really cool story. And as we talk about a lot of problems at DCFS in our home state, it's stories like this that give me a little hope. It's that human touch that really can make a difference, and I hope we can see more of this in Illinois because there's a lot of kids under the state's care in Illinois who could use some love and use some hope. Clowns, do my thing here and get in trouble because that's what I do. But this one's not really a clown. It's just I'm going to ding my buddy here, Aaron Delmar, give him a little bit of a little tap. But he posted a video on Facebook about pizza at an unexpected stop. And the video text on it was, if you know where I am, you might be from southern or rural Illinois. A lot of people figured out it was Casey's. And Casey's actually has 496 locations throughout Illinois. I'll have Lane bring up a map. There's 15 of them right around Palatine, his home city where I live as well. This is the kind of thing that reminds you sometimes when people have very little experience statewide. They're like, oh, Casey's is a rural Illinois thing. It's like, no, it actually isn't. But good try, big guy. So I just got to give him a little crap for it. And then last one here is just for our politics. I continue to get sick and tired of our politics, where good people are stuck in between partisan interests. There was a story on WGN who really has done some great reporting lately about flooding problems in Flossmoor and how they can't get the federal funding that they need because it's on hold. And there's a quote in here from a representative of Flossmoor talking about how the city of Chicago and the federal government are in a big fight right now. And I don't know who's right or wrong. All I know is we're caught in the middle and we deserve better. We see this over and over right now. And you could put the onus on J.B. Pritzker for wanting to be president. So he just fights Trump in the White House on everything because he just wants the clicks to run for president. Or Trump in the White House for taking out their anger on blue states like our state. But the reality is, in the midst of our politics and our bickering back and forth and our social media posts, it's actually real people who are getting hurt and left behind in many cases. I really wish more of our elected officials would think about that. You were elected to serve, and yeah, we want to play our partisan games, and I get politics. It's the whole point of this podcast. But every once in a while, it'd be cool if you just put the dukes down and did something right and did something good for the people you're supposed to serve. With that, we'll give our closing thoughts. We always let our guests go last, so Chris, go ahead.
So we have 4 days when you're watching this. As I said earlier in the podcast, we're all very tired, but I encourage everybody to push through this weekend. In the Chicagoland area, it's going to be raining, it's going to be snowing. I don't care. I'm going to be going out on Sunday myself with an umbrella over my shoulder, hitting as many doors as I can for my clients. But that's what I do. That's what you should be doing as well. If you're a candidate, don't let the weather distract you. You're the United States Postal Service at this point. With rain, sleet, or snow, you're delivering, okay? I don't even know if that's the title anymore. Who cares? So, listen, we're all exhausted. We're going to push through Tuesday. And then Wednesday comes, we're all going to take a long nap, and then we're going to go to November. We're going to win some damn races, okay? Thank you. Have a wonderful day. I have to go back to work, so I'll see you guys next week.
Butler, what do you got?
Well, we already kind of talked about it briefly at the beginning about turnout. It's incredibly important, especially because, there's about less than 100,000 Republicans that have voted so far, and in a race, with statewide races on the ballot and even some of the local ones, every vote's going to make a difference. So make sure you get out and vote if you haven't already. Remind people to get out and vote, friends, family, and encourage them to vote for the right candidates because it's going to matter in November.
I like it. Nikki, your final thoughts. Thanks for joining us.
Yes, thanks for having me. This was a lot of fun. And I would just say to those constituents in U.S. Congressional District 6, I'd love to ask for your vote at this time and have you get out to vote for me on or before March 17th. Because if you want change in District 6, if you're tired of not being represented for the last several years and not having a voice in Congress, then it's time to get out and vote for me, Niki Conforti, and I will give you that voice in Congress. Thank you.
Travis, you get the final word.
Thanks, guys. To me, the last final word just comes down to prayer. Pray for our troops that are fighting for us overseas. Pray for the people that were damaged by the tornado up in Kankakee. Pray for Illinois as we head into an election, and hopefully good things on the horizon for all of us.
I love it. Well, I know you stayed past the time you had, so if you've got to jump off at any point, go ahead. I have just two quick things to close.
Okay. Thanks,
Number
guys.
one, thanks, Travis. Number one is if you are watching these races on election night, you're probably aware that Core Strategies often puts up a portal for you to look at because we've got a war room already for all of our clients. So we put up a portal with a lot of the top races for Republicans throughout the state. Niki's will be up on there. A lot of the races you should be paying attention to will all be on that portal. So Lane's going to bring up the link on screen. I'll say it here. It's 2026.corestrategies.com. If you want to follow along on election night on Tuesday, you'll see all the top races for Republicans throughout the state with the totals there. Plus, you'll see analysis from me and Chris and Michael and a bunch of other Republican staffers and consultants and strategists throughout the state. So come with us and enjoy election night together. The last thing I just want to do really quick is a little bit fun. I'm going to have Lane bring up a map. I love finding these maps online, and this one just made me chuckle. So we're just going to do it real quick. But it was the most popular word used in dating profiles by state. Illinois was neighborhood, which I could live with. Wisconsin and Minnesota had cabin. Michigan was bonfires. Iowa was farm. So, all right, these are respectable words to have in your dating profiles. Indiana was NASCAR. The number one word used in dating profile sites in Indiana is NASCAR, which sounds hilarious until you realize there's a funnier one. Missouri's was zoo. In what context do you use the word zoo in your dating profile? But apparently,
Probably
in
because the
Missouri,
St. Louis Zoo is one of the best in the country, right? And it's
it's
free, so
claimed
it's a
to be.
good
It's
place
not.
for a date.
It claims to be. It isn't
Free
actually, but
entry.
they claim
Free
to be.
entry.
But either way, NASCAR and zoo make me feel a little better about our home state. That's all.
Like
I'm
Indy
saying.
500 and St. Louis Zoo. What more could
I
a man ask
guess.
for?
Anyways, we ended with some fun. Thank you to our guests. I know some had to go. Thank you,
everyone.
Nikki. Thank you, Michael. Thank you, Lane Davis, our producer. We'll catch you next week, which will be after the primary. So get all the analysis on the smoke-filled room.